Near where I live is a massive swamp with a wicked burger place in the middle of it. As you can infer, I was quite hungry for some swamp burger, and yesterday I decided to make the trek to nab me a few of them. It's usually an all-day affair, but I had some time off and a long walk could do me some good. So I grabbed my swampin' clothes, some muck boots, and my longest staff, and I set out for the swamp. An afternoon march into a dangerous swamp couldn't be simpler. I'm a great and powerful wizard, after all. As I was making my way toward the entrance, to the swamp, however, a passing wagon cart stopped next to me, and the driver happened to also be headed towards the burger joint. He had another passenger with him. A local horse seller was taking some of his time off and decided to hire his cart. Cost me a jar of potato beans for a round trip. Criminal, methinks. The swamp entrance had a guard on duty, and he checked the cart driver's papers. We told him our business and went on our way. At this point, it was still midday, and I thought we could get to the place in a few hours with light to spare for the return trip. Myself and the horse trader talked quite a bit on the early part of the trip. He spoke about different horse breeds and what to look for when selling them. Color, shape, what diseases to look out for, that sort of ilk. As he spoke, however, his cadence was speeding up. He riled on about horse breeds and magical effects of horses, as if he'd taken a haste potion. Soon the cart, however, slowed to a halt, even as proprietor was jabbing on about selling horses. I looked over the shoulder of the driver and saw 3 men scrounging a flipped-over cart. With the background noise of hastily spoken paper pushing and bookkeeping, one of the men yelled at the driver that the toll of the road was 10 cold per head. Before the driver could respond in protest, however, the merchant hopped out of the cart, still swiftly speaking on the fiscal technologies of saddle speculation. The scroungers grabbed their clubs and swords and began walking toward the man, threatening him to get back in his cart. Honest to God, it was really strange. The merchant spoke even more quickly now, an almost song-like flurry of noise about hoof cleaning, eye color, and employee partner abstracting came from the man. Before one of the scavengers could threaten the man once more, his head exploded, and tinny ringing flew through the ears of all in the area as if a combustion had just happened. It was strange. The other 2 men screamed in agony and covered their ears as they groveled to the floor, and soon their heads exploded as well. Silence filled the air as the merchant stopped his chorus. The man told the carriage driver to continue on and hop back into the cart. As we passed, however, I saw the cart had been filled with gold chests and paperwork. The horse that had been pulling the rubbled cart had its leg bandaged, but it was lying dead, blood flowing from its ears. Soon as some time had passed, as we rode in silence deeper into the swamp. The merchant, of course, broke the silence with more simple conversation about the weather. Farther along the road, though, travelers began to pass the cart headed in the other direction toward town. The road became increasingly harder for the cart to navigate. People and creatures of all sorts had flooded the narrow road. I saw many of the travelers holding goods and foods. Some of the carts were filled with what looked to be furniture and clothing. I heard the merchant swear under his breath, something about 2 nations fighting or whatever. As we traveled through the sea of people, however, the road became bumpier. The crowds moved even faster. They rocked the cart back and forth as if we were at a sea during a storm. Eventually, however, the merchant had had enough and told the driver to stop. He stood up on the cart and began speaking quickly once again. I, of course, almost shit my pants and ripped through my spellbook for a silence spell before he killed somebody else. I couldn't find the silence, but I did see a transmutation spell, and honestly, isn't that the best form of silence? I quickly shot an emerald-colored bolt toward the back of the horse seller, but it bounced away. In the cacophony of screams and explosions, the green bolt of lightning enveloped the chunk of the crowd of travelers, turning them into frogs. The merchant, shocked by the green light, stopped his chant and laughed back down into the cart. Half the crowd had been turned into blood-stained amphibians. They riveted and hopped off into the murky waters of the swamp. At this point, you can imagine I was feeling a little bit embarrassed, but luckily nobody saw, so I cooled down pretty quickly. We continued on the journey, and nobody said anything about what had occurred. The merchant just kept talking on and on about paperwork and horse breeds as if nothing had even happened. No mention of who those people were, where they were going, what they were doing, nothing. Not that I was particularly any better. I pretty much just looked through my books the entire ride, trying to put the images out of my mind. Finally, after an hour or 2 of travel, we arrived at our destination, the Swamp Burger. The neon olive sign contrasted the afternoon sun, revealing the creatures of the swamp swarming the trash piles next to the structure. Before we could enter, however, a slew of frogs and mixture of hats and weapons came hopping out of the grove, charging the front doors of the building. Riveting and raising their weapons in rage, the frogs began banging on the side of the building, shattering glass and rushing inside. I dove behind a bush and watched with intrigue, while the cart driver rode off quickly. The horse merchant, however, stood in shock staring at the frogs, tarnishing the precious structure. "The swamp burger has fallen," he whimpered under his breath, tears rolling down his face. He tried to speak his words of managerial power, but was too caught up in crying and choking that only a few words came out. I sat in the bushes for what seemed like an hour, wondering what really to do. Honestly, I wasn't feeling very hungry anymore, so I guess I just left. I know you probably wanted me to tell you what happened to the horse seller, or the frogs, and the burger place, but honestly, I just didn't care anymore. I spotted some frogs trying to haggle with the carriage driver near the building, so I walked over and joined them, talking the price down if we split the payment. I hadn't even had any money anymore for the burgers. I just planned on eating out of the trash, so I thought when we got back to town, I would just turn him into a frog. It was a really weird day, honestly. Frogs were cool when I spoke to them on the way home, mostly because they didn't try to kill everything around them. Anyway, we got to the gate of town, I turned the driver into a frog, I walked home in the amber glow of mage light, ate a donut, went to bed. Bye.